Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. This is your host, Erin Bradley. And if it's your first time checking out the Pursuing Freedom podcast, you're in for a great show. I'm glad you're here. And if you've been around for a while, welcome back, my friends. I appreciate you. And I think you're going to love this conversation we're about to have with Dan Rochon. He is a real estate agent who's been around the block for a few decades. So he's got his stripes that he's earned in this real estate space. He's also the founder of a coaching organization that helps agents develop consistent and predictable income. And he created a community called the No Broke Months community, which is also the name of his podcast. And most recently, we are on the leading edge of his new book release, which I got a pre release copy of, which was one of the coolest gifts. Thank you so much, Dan. And it's called Teach to Sell. And it really teaches the process around how to get off the roller coaster of highs and lows, which is such an epidemic in the real estate space. He's also really passionate about teaching branding that helps you attract clients rather than chase. And I would say that's a pretty common desire for most people in all sales industries. And since most of our audience are business owners, I think that regardless of your job title, a lot of what Dan is passionate about is going to speak straight to the soul, which is why I'm excited to have you here. So thank you so much, Dan, for being here with us today.
You're welcome, Aaron. It's my pleasure.
All right. So we always like to start from the humble beginnings, Dan. Talk us
Yeah,
through how you fell into the real estate space, what your journey looked like, and what's brought you to be so passionate as you are today to help more agents with consistent income.
sure. So 2005, I woke up one morning, balled up on my bathroom floor with my kidneys on fire, my esophagus on fire, my liver on fire, and just about any organ that in my body, including my skin, I guess, that was dehydrated and looking for relief. And that was the last day that I drank in my life. And before then, I had a pretty struggling journey of, it looked like about 12 beers of 12 bottles of beer a night and two bottles of wine to wash that down with. And that was from the age of 13 to 32. I got sober that day, that morning, and from there, I started to say, okay, I mean, I was waiting tables. I was making a lot of money. I was, really high class steakhouse, Washington, D.C. All the lobbyists came there, the senators and the, celebrities. It was like pretty cool, right? But yeah, I hated my job. I made a lot of money, but I hated my job. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to help people solve their problems, achieve their goals. I just didn't know how. And one morning, I was getting ready for a shift. My buddy Bill Cribbin said, "Hey, Roshan, you ever think about real estate sales?" And I had not, and that's where it opened my mind and or opened my eyes. And 2 years, that was 2 years after I got into recovery, and that's how I discovered real estate sales as an opportunity to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a salesperson. And I think it's for some that get involved in real estate sales, it's a sales profession. For others, it's a business. I've always treated it as a business. And certainly, sales is, a big component of it. And that's how I got started. Really for relief of how do I become a business owner?
Well, I saw in your book, and maybe it doesn't play out to the entire first year, but something around 2008, which was when I was having my credit card declined for a $2 cup of coffee. So I'm just curious. I feel like we had a similar journey of maybe not exactly rookie of the year when you first jumped in, or
Yeah.
did you have instant success?
6 months. So November 2007, I got licensed. April 2008, 6 months later, had my first closing. Now, that being said, there was a little bit of like figuring it out, like getting my feet underneath me. And then, of course, there's always like, the work in real estate sales that you do today, it's not going to show up for 90 to 120 days anyway. So it wasn't, in retrospect, I was discouraged for sure. I was confused, but, looking back on it, it's probably not so bad.
Mhm.
And so then between month 6 and 18, I had a lot of success. And I just, there was a storm brewing and not, I mean, a storm of mortgage crisis and defaults, and the entire economy was crashing, particularly in real estate. And I leaned into the storm. I said, okay, what is the opportunity? And the opportunity was working really, really hard. It was specializing in short sales at the time. I got some bank owned accounts. So 18 months after I got my license, I did have some success in those, that second 6 to 18 months. I was able to buy the brokerage that I worked for, and that was a Keller Williams Realty franchise. I operated as a operating partner there for 10 years and sold that in 2018. So I did have a lot of like, uncertainty, self-doubt, setbacks, broke months at the beginning. But I'm fortunate today that ever since 2008, so there was 2 months in 2008 after April that I had 0 months, and then from there all the way up until now, we're recording this in the middle of 2026. There hasn't been a single month without a sale, and of all the things that I've done, including owning a brokerage and joint ventures and title companies and mortgage companies and such, property management, I'm like all kinds of different crazy stuff. What I'm most proud of in my business, of like what I say, I'm most proud of this success. It really is no broke months for that long, ongoing. Because anybody that's ever done it can tell you that. And I know you have a mortgage background. It's like that's a tough thing to do, through almost 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. So talk me through, how are things the same or different in the business model that created that level of consistent and predictable income as it was then when you embarked upon this journey that became yeah, like an
Yeah.
unstoppable journey of consistency. And what is different in 2026 or just in recent years as the market has been, how it's been, is it fundamentally the same? Is there a lot that's different, or is it somewhere in
Yeah.
between?
Yeah, fundamentally it's the same. Like fundamentally, it's I have to wake up every morning unemployed and, take 1 to 3 hours every single day to seek business. And then of course, you're servicing it and you're leveraging that and such. But what's changed is the technology, artificial intelligence, big data, coming into the marketplace, consolidation of brokerages. There's been a lot of noise external, but the basics are the same. Do your work 1 to 3 hours a day, go find business, right? That hasn't changed since day one. And it was like that before my journey started as well. So, and the other thing that hasn't changed is there's always a conversation within the real estate agent community, probably within the business community as well, which is there's always a reason to look at the suck. And that has been true over 20 years. There hasn't been a time in the marketplace where there wasn't something to take a look at, well, if this happens, the sky's falling. AI is going to take over our jobs. But before that, it was realtor, the National Association of Realtors sucks, or the government's doing this program, or, my first book I wrote was called Real Estate Evolution. I started writing that maybe 10 years ago. And when I was writing it, there was a company called, I forget, I don't even remember the name of them, but I remember at the beginning of writing that book, every single, you go on all these online forums, Facebook groups, etc., and everyone's complaining like this company's going to destroy the industry. Before I finished writing the book, that company was out of business. Okay. But that's an example of there's
Yeah.
always a reason to like deflect our focus into like, oh my goodness, into that fear, right? And it could be legitimate, could not be legitimate, but just focus on what you can control is 1 to 3 hours a day, go do your job, go find business. You do that every single day, 5 days a week, that's the recipe to my success of consistency for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Let me ask you something. How did you develop the capacity to keep the blinders on when there is so much negativity? Because you're right. I feel like um, optimism or the possibility of opportunities that exist
Yeah.
can be contagious, and negativity and fear and doubt is also really contagious. So, how do you keep yourself aligned amidst all the noise?
Yeah, and it's a good question because I'm not optimistic. I'm not optimistic at all. I'm not pessimistic either. I just know that I know what my job description is, and I know what the very most important thing for my job description. So I don't need to have feelings around that, right? Like, so I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to start at 9 o'clock. I'm going to meet with my team at 9:30. I'm going to go through and I'm going to find opportunity for somebody to hire me. By 12 o'clock, I'll find somebody. Like I'm confident of that, right? Now, I don't need to feel great about that. I don't need to feel pessimistic. And I also don't need to feel distracted, right? Because I know what's not going to make me money tomorrow is to take a look at, things that are external that are beyond my control and bitch and moan about that, right?
Yeah.
Like just, so how do I avoid it? It's just being crystal clear. It's like there's five things that make that make you money, right? And I go through this in Teach to Sell in the current book that's being published by Post Hill Press and distributed by Simon Schuster. And the five things to make you money are this in real estate sales, and this will apply for most businesses. Lead generate daily, right? That could be marketing, that could be prospecting, that could be networking. Convert those people to meet with you, attend the appointments so that you get hired, negotiate, and then practice your scripts and role play. That's my job description. Okay, so that all happens, right? And then I don't need to worry about what's external to that because I'm in control of all those things. Now, build as a business owner, there's a different five things. So we call this leverage time. So that is to recruit talented people to you if you're building a business, select the right people to be in business with, train those people so they can reach your goals, lead those people so they know how to think so they can reach your goals, and motivate those people to reach your goals. So I gave you five in your business, five on your business, and then the last one would be just manage your money. So those are the 11 activities. Every single morning, I visit my money every single day, right? I visit it, make sure there's something there, right? And so those are the 11 activities of a business owner and a salesperson. And when you're clear on that, then you make a choice. Like you're either going to do the work or not. I think really the distraction that many of my colleagues face is really just maybe they're not clear on what they should be doing, or maybe they're just fear driven, but if you do those five activities in your business, you don't even need to build a business. You're going to have success in sales.
Love it. I totally agree. So let me ask you, with the epidemic in our industry of feast or famine, where what I see a lot with coaching clients is that when the pipeline has dried up and they have that broke month or that broke quarter or that broke year, right?
Yeah.
They, if they've been in the business for a while, they do know what to do and they know how to do it. So they muster up the courage to do it. And then inevitably the leads come in, the opportunities present themselves. And what I notice is that they cling on tightly to these few opportunities, and
Yeah.
they stop the momentum of creating the opportunities, and they just focus on serving and converting the opportunities. And then inevitably they pick their head up 60 to 90 days later after the closings have happened and they're out of business again. So how, when you've had severe pops in business, which I'm sure at some point you've experienced the overwhelm that can come with a windfall, how do
Yeah.
you maintain the consistency of that execution while also handling all the demands of the customer service side of the business?
I leverage all the customer service side. And my customer service representative, they tell me what to do. I don't tell them what to do. And so, I've really focused on how to hire. Like if you're looking in business, so I gave you like the tactics, right? But there's really four pillars of a business owner. So the first pillar is to believe in yourself. Okay. So if you're not going to be able to believe in yourself, it's going to be a struggle to really get anything, have any success. And then once you understand how to believe yourself, then it's about finding the business, right? So that's the same as one of those five steps we talked about before. And then once you understand how to get to find a business, right? Then it's about building an organization so you can leverage and scale. All right, that could be one virtual assistant. In my case, it's 9 virtual assistants as of today. It's been as many as 25. It's been as low as two or three. And then once you understand how to be able to scale, leverage and scale, then it's about leadership. All right, and the definition of leadership, which I talked to you about in the five steps to build a business, the definition of leadership is to be able to teach somebody else how to think so they can get what they want. All right, so now it's how do I focus on my high priorities? It's because I do treat it like a business. I do get the leverage and support, and you're absolutely correct, Erin, in your observation. It's been the same as my observation. When I used to be a brokerage owner, we used to study this, and you would see that there's what is it, four different types of agents. The most common one. What do you think the most common description of an agent was? You know the answer to this, right? I'm asking the audience. Zero. Okay, that's the most common in the business. Okay, let's not worry about that. Let's talk about the people that are actually producing. So then it's that 1 to 2 transactions January, zero February, zero March, 2 to 3 in April, zero zero, 2 to 3, zero zero. And that's really because of that long sales cycle and because of the fact of if you choose to be able to find two or three clients and you cling on to them, like you said, then and you choose to stop, finding business, then you're going to be out of business, right? And then you're going to start that cycle over and over. And that's very, very common. Okay. And then the last type of production would be those top producers that you see with the consistency. All right. So these are the different like levels of real estate agents, right? But for that middle piece there, the ones that are like two or three transactions and then nothing, 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 two or three, you just got to commit. Even if you don't choose to build an organization or get support, you just have to commit to the fact of I'm going to do 1 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. I don't care how busy you get. You can find 1 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week to be able to do your job of finding business. That still gives you, if you're going to work a 10-hour day, 6 to 9 hours to do all that service stuff, right? It's just being committed to say, I'm not going to miss this no matter what. And when real estate agents can do that, you can have a consistency.
Yeah, I agree completely. And honestly, I'm a sprinter. So I was always like, I got in the zone 10 to 3, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just like full
That's
sprint,
fine. Yeah. Yeah.
dressed for success. Like, I don't say dress for success because I don't have that great of a wardrobe. But I mean, I always tell people it's like, treat it like game day. Like you signed up for a marathon. You may not be in shape. You may not feel confident, but you're probably going to try to hydrate, wear the right clothes, and eat the right food. And you're just going to show up on the starting line and do your best. And it's like, just do that. Get to the starting line, get in the game, and do your best.
Yeah.
So, what prompted you? Tell us a little backstory around like when did No Broke Months? When did that become born? Was it a podcast first, a community second? Like, what in what capacity are you serving the real estate community through that?
Sure. Yeah, it came, and I've sort of mentioned this earlier, but I didn't, talk about the conversation that gave me the awareness is one of my mentors, right? So one of the things that, again, I talk about in Teach Yourself is about you should have mentors in your life. You should have coaches. You should have guides, right? And some of them, I pay for. Some of them are friends. Some of them are, people I've coached before, right? Like I'm always interested in getting, help people to understand their perspective, to learn from them, and then of course to teach them as well when that's appropriate. And so one day I was having a conversation with a mastermind of mine, and they were just saying like, Dan, like, what's your superpower? What are you most proud of? And it started with like, I don't know, man, I've done a lot in this business. And then when I really was like having that conversation, it's like, well, that's where No Broke Months was born. It was just from my own, like, of what I'm proud of, and what I know is really freaking hard. And so from there, that was sort of like the destination. The community is actually called the Consistent Predictable Income Community, right? And so No Broke Months actually became the website, and then Teach to Sell became the methodology, right? So then we sit there and say, okay, so if you're able to help people have consistency, what's at least one way or the most effective way that you can do that? And what I've outlined and what I discovered is the most effective way that you could be able to be a business owner and to be able to be trusted was Teach to Sell. And that's really truly about being the guide. Instead of going to beg for business, it's about teaching and training and guiding the prospects for the predictable future problems of the future. That was born when I was a brokerage owner, and the agents would come up to me every single day, and it's the same problem, same problem, same problem. And one morning, I'm like, why am I solving the same problem? Right? It's just a different agent, different client, right? So, I'll give you an example. So, in real estate sales, like a real estate inspection, right? So, like when I'm consulting, when I'm training other agents to consult a buyer, for example, before we even look at a property, we're talking and advising them about the predictable problem. Say, hey, listen, Mr. Buyer, Miss Buyer, what's your husband's name, Aaron?
Tony.
Tony, Aaron. So when the two of you, when we write an offer and it gets accepted, we're gonna call that ratified. That's what we call that. And when that happens, I'm gonna tell you you're gonna be excited. And then you're gonna get in the car and the two of you are gonna go home. And then you're gonna look at each other and you're gonna be like, what the did we do? All right. You're going to have some fear. You're going to have some anxiety. You're going to have some buyer's remorse. That night, you may even have a little bit of a conflict. I know you and Tony love each other. I know there's no conflicts here ever, right? But there may be a little bit of something there. And then you may toss and turn all night. And again, you're feeling this anxiety. And the next morning, your sister texts you. She's like, you're a freaking idiot. What are you doing? And then 2 days later, you do this home inspection. And when that home inspection comes in, remember the emotional state that you're going to be in. And the home inspector is going to say, boom, There's 100 things wrong with this property. Okay. And now it's like, oh my gosh. Right. Now, what I just described is a common problem in the real estate industry, but what happens there is most agents, they never take the time to be able to prep their clients of what they're going to experience. Okay. And instead, now they're dealing with this home inspection report with, they're asking for all kinds of nonsense on it. Right. That's not logistical or logical. It's all based in emotions. Okay. So that's an example of what teach to sell is. It's about consulting before the predictable problems. Now, I do with every client, but about 3 months ago, I had a client call me the next morning. This was before the home inspection. He said, Dan, oh my God, I'm so grateful you told me because my wife and I, we had it last night. Right. And this morning, I'm like, I want out. I want out. But because you told me that this was going to happen, like, I'm feeling okay about it. I'm really happy and grateful that you told me this. Right. So imagine the trust that was developed rather than if I didn't have the conversation up front, now there's like this breakdown of trust and energy. And guess what? Who's going to get blamed for that? It's going to be the agent, right? Even when the agent, like nothing changed, nothing at all changed, except I took the time to be able to prep them up front.
I love it. Well, I having written a book that I jokingly say is more like a pamphlet with really big print and pictures for real estate agents, and having received this, pre-release copy of your book, and it's dense. I mean, you really took the time to go through everything in here. So, what are some of the other fundamental principles that people can expect from the book?
Sure. Really just understanding the concept of what teach to sell is, right? And how it works. And I use neurolinguistic programming, I use psychology to be able to help the reader to align their approach with the other person's perspective, right? And so to be able to do that, you got to focus on listening more than talking to be able to discover their needs, their fears, their goals, and then guide them with clarity to see the solution that you offer, right? So you can imagine that every person has this pain, right? This struggle, this internal fear, this external fear. And we all want something good, right? So you have a fear and you have a desire, right? And when I say internal, that's our feelings, right? And external would be like, well, I don't have enough money to buy a home, for example. That's external. And now I feel like crap because I can't provide for my family. That's internal. And so it's understanding what are they experiencing emotionally, what are they experiencing externally, and then what do they want emotionally, and what do they want externally. And when you can be able to position it so that you're in the between, the gap in between fear and pain and desire, now that's where you become the professional, and that's where you become wanted. Okay. AI can't do that, by the way, right? You get in all these nonsense conversations like, no, like that's the basics, that's the fundamentals, right? Because you'd asked me about that earlier. I'm like, yeah, the fundamentals don't change. The circumstances change, the technology change. There's a whole bunch of stuff that changes, but fundamentals never did.
Yeah. No, I love this so much. And I imagine with the neurolinguistic programming component of this, which I also love, that has also been super helpful in how you navigate the other parties to the transaction, right? Because like I just remember those wonderful unicorn transactions where at the end of the day, all of the guides, meaning the buyer's agent, the listing agent, the mortgage lender, whoever's involved in the transaction,
Sure.
if we all stay focused on the desire being the same, that everybody wants the same outcome here, then there's harmony. And when fear is running the show, there's conflict. And I'm curious to know in your experience as both a leader, a mentor to realtors and all the things that over the recent years, there's been a shift in attention for a lot of people to fear driving the bus and more stressful transactions and things like that. So does that play into your coaching? Like, how do we support everybody getting to the finish line in a harmonious manner?
It does, but it's all about communication, right? So I'll give you an example. So I'm still in production today, right? Like I'm coaching, I'm leading, and I say it's my part-time job, right? But I'm still doing 36, 40 transactions a year. And that's fine, right? And so this morning I'm having a conversation with somebody, and it's an older lady. She's out of state. Her colleague called me about a week ago and says, "Hey, my friend's selling this house." And I had asked her colleague, should I talk to you as a point of contact or the friend selling the house? She says, well, I'm just sort of setting this up. Why don't you give her a call? So I gave her a call before, didn't reach her, called her again this morning. And when I called her, she was annoyed. I first called her by her first name, and she rebutted that with Mrs. Smith or whatever it was. I didn't have her last name, and she's like, "Why are you calling me?" Right? I'm like, "Okay, no worries." I said, "Listen, Mrs. Smith, thank you for letting me know your name. Your friend Michelle had asked for me to give you a call. She didn't refer what your last name is. I want to let you know I'm a friend, right? Like I was, and I'm here to be able to help you. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" That simple communication was able to transition a very, very annoyed woman that was about to hang up on me to a deep conversation where I was able to then set the appointment. Okay. If I wasn't paying attention to her energy, and if I wasn't more important, if her well being wasn't more important to me than me making a sale, then, if I'm putting my own interests first, I'm not even paying attention to that energy and it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
But instead, I'm more concerned about the other person first.
Yeah.
And if she would have said to me, like I had another gentleman earlier today, similar type situation, and I say, well, listen, it seems like you're not available to talk. Is there a better time to talk? And he's like, yeah, yeah, you caught me at work. Cause call me at 2:30, right? And like right before this, about an hour ago, I gave him a call and the conversation went well, right? So it's just about understanding, and that's what teach to sell is. It's about putting the other person in front. It's not there's no pushy tactics. It's service first selling, and it works across all industries: real estate, coaching, consulting, insurance. And it really emphasizes in the internal alignment, belief in your value, consistent action. You add those two together, that is what produces predictable income.
Yeah, I love this all so much. I could talk to you for hours. We're cut from the same cloth, and I want to respect your time. And I feel like we just could drop the mic right there. So let me ask you, I'm looking at, we're recording this on June 9th. When is the book being released and where can people find it?
Well, regardless of when it's released, it's June 23rd, 2026, but you're probably listening to this after that point, which is great. Congratulations that you can get the book straight from the retailers, Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, wherever you buy a book, of course, on Amazon. But if you want to get a special bonus, I'm going to invite you to visit www.teachtosellbook.com. That's teachtosellbook.com. And in there, I put together a four-pillar course that walks you through the book, and so that you have a guide, that's me, walking you through step by step of the entire journey. And so if you're looking, like for a shortcut of like, how do I find business? It's there. If you're looking for a shortcut of how do I be able to communicate in a way that's natural and influences, it's there. And so we used to charge $10,000 for that course, and we give it away with the a $19 investment for the book. Then you get that $10,000 class, and that's teachtosellbook.com.
I love that. Well, I'm so excited and I can't wait to see the success that's about to unfold because the content that you put together is gold. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule today to be with us.
You're welcome, Aaron. Thank you for your time.
And Dan, how else can folks get a hold of you if they want to connect with you? Can they DM you? Can they reach out to you somewhere in the world
Yeah.
besides listening to the podcast?
My No Broke Months podcast. My name is Dan Rochon, Rochon. Go ahead and Google me. And if you see a hockey player with two teeth, not it. I'm the other guy. And I would love to be able to connect with you on social. And I'm active on social. I'll respond to any messages and friend requests and would love to connect with you pretty much anywhere that you connect with people. I'm there.
Awesome. So for listeners, I always ask you guys if you had a takeaway, send Dan a DM, let him know. So he knows that somebody's out there listening because we put this content out there. We hope someone's paying attention and we love getting messages from you guys. So do Dan a favor if you enjoyed this episode and share it with a friend and be sure to stop whatever you're doing if you haven't yet left that 5-star review for the Pursuing Freedom podcast because it helps us continue to attract amazing guests like Dan and help this content get found so more people can build a life you don't need a vacation from. I love you guys so much. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time.